Hi, this is Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California, here today to talk to you about hip openers. Hip openers are one of those things that you generally love or you hate, okay? Maybe you heard in science class at some point that energy once created can't be destroyed. Well, negative energy, when we take it in, unless we release it back out, we hide it here in our hips. Why? Because unless you go to yoga class, you never have to look at it. But if you go to yoga class, sometimes they can be a little confrontational. So we're going to talk about some exercises we can do, or stretches I should say, that are going to open up your hips. I'm starting here with Baddha Konasana. This is sort of the most popular of the hip openers. But it's a little bit different than the way you learned it when you were in first grade. In first grade, they taught you a few things. One was you sort of hug your feet together. And two is you try to touch your head to your feet. So it looks something like this. And it's just sort of like this crunchy little butterfly chunk. I've got this big round spine and my knees are up in the air and I'm just trying so hard to get my head to my feet. But the fact is this hip opener, you can see I can get my knees really, really low on this one, to the floor. It's not about pushing down on your legs. This is the other thing we learned in first grade, is push down to get the stretch. In yoga, we never push. We're always trying to create the pull. We're always trying to bring the energy to us instead of like forcing it, right? So what you need to know anatomically is we have what's called a psoas. Okay, this is our major hip flexor. It runs from basically your sacrum in back, through your pelvis, and connects in here at the top of the femur. Now, this muscle that goes from your back to your front acts like sort of like a hydraulic on a drawbridge. Like, you know a drawbridge, and like when the hydraulic gets longer, the bridge goes down. As the hydraulic gets shorter, the bridge goes up. Now imagine your hips, your flexors, as a hydraulic. As they get shorter, or in another word, tighter, my knees come up. And you're going to see like a lot of, especially men, with tighter hips that sort of like sit like this because their hydraulic system is so tight. As my hydraulics get looser, my legs are going to go down like a drawbridge. Now, why is this important? Because the action in this pose is actually not about pushing my knees down, but rather of pulling them outwards. What I'm thinking of is taking from here, pulling my knee this way, and as my knee lengthens out, it also, by default, goes down. So it's the legs out that create this stretch. Now look at my feet. See how you can see the bottoms of my feet? Watch what happens when I push my soles together, as I learned in first grade. Okay, now I'm pushing down with my knees. I've got a lot of hip opening, but I can't get them down because my feet are actually sort of counteracting this action. So, it's knees out, feet open like a book. Okay, now, to take this further, what we're going to do is we're going to lean forward. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see this a little bit better. When you lean into this, the concept of forward bending in yoga is this. Within every forward bend, there's an element of a back bend. Now, I know that seems sort of contradictory, like forward bend, back bend. How can you have a forward bend and a back bend at the same time? Well, forward bends come from your hips, and back bends come from your spine, so I can forward bend from my hip, but still back bend from my spine. You see how I'm not rounding, as most people do, but extending out. Now what happens is this extension pulls from here and helps to actually open me up. You can feel that if you round your spine, even though your head is lower, it's going to actually release the pose. So we're going to go forward as far as you can. If you can get your chest all the way down, then your back is going to round a little bit as your head goes down, just because your head is just going to be lower than your chest. But let's say on the off chance you don't have the flexibility I have, then you can put your hands behind you, watch this, and instead of caving in from here and rounding from here, you could push to find that extension. See that little Superman chest? Dun, 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 dun. So I always have my Superman chest every time I do a forward bend. Make sure though, this doesn't mean that you're leaning back into your hands. Okay, general rule of thumb, if you're sitting in something that you would just watch TV in, it's not a yoga pose. So again, nice Superman chest, long spine, knees are pulling out to push down, feet are opening like a book. And if you're less flexible, you're just going to try to lean forward, see how I have that back bend. If you're more flexible, you're going to start to reach out and try to get your head down as far away from your feet as possible. So remember, we're extending, not crowding in. Okay, so this is my first stretch. You can hold that for as many breaths as you want. I suggest at least 5, but sometimes I hold it for 10, 20, whatever feels good. I'm trying to open my hips. Now, second stretch, we're going to go into a single pigeon. Now, single pigeon, you just take one leg, doesn't matter which leg, we're going to do both legs, and you swing it around behind you, so you're right on top of your knee. I'll turn sideways so you can see in a second. And on this front leg, for beginners, you just want this knee just wide of your chest. So you see, when I lie down, that my knee is not under me, but to the side of me. Okay, let me show you what's going on with that back leg. My front leg is crossed in front of me. I roll my leg behind me, and instead of being on the inside of the knee, I want you to be right on top of the knee. So see how my whole foot is pointing backwards. Okay, so my whole leg is on the floor, and then I fold down. Now, the problems or the issues that come up a lot is on this one, people tend to lean towards that knee and get all like wonky to the side. So you want to make sure that your sacrum, that's back here, is even to the floor. If you need to, like if you're really tight, you're sort of up here, you can actually just put like a butt block under there. Like just take a yoga block and shove it right there under your butt to support you. Okay? So, in your single pigeon, this is a pose you can moderate by yourself. Right now, my foot is way back, big bend in my knee. This is going to be the easiest stretch. If I want to make it harder, I start taking this front foot forward. So now it's parallel to the front of the mat. But I'm not collapsing to the side. I'm straight on, and I fold in. Okay, so this is just going to take it deeper into the outer thigh, outer hip. Now let's say you want to get back into that inner hip. Here's a secret that very few people will tell you, because they don't really know. If you take this front foot, and you move it midline, so if I lie down, it's right there in the middle of my chest. If I lie all the way down, I can actually pick my nose with my toe. If you move it midline, you can see it right here, then now it's going to take it into the inner hip, and it's going to just change this pose dramatically. So depending if you want it in the back of your hip or the inside of your hip, the wider the foot goes out to the side towards midline, the deeper, the more it moves over to the other side away from midline, the easier. So you just want to make sure this is one of those poses you could totally fall asleep in, so try not to. See if you can instead find something that's going to work for you. Okay. Now, once you got that, if that's easy, consider lifting up your chest in a back bend, like a cobra position. Okay, so I'm arching my spine. I'm going to turn sideways in a second. And this is just going to take it more, not only up my back, but more into the butt again. Okay, so here I am in my forward fold. I lift up, see my back bend. And if this is easy for you, you could even grab that back foot with one or both hands and pull it away. Okay? Or you can pull it in if you want more of a quad stretch, but I like to create the back bend. Okay? Now, obviously, you've probably seen the full pose. I'll go ahead and show you the full pose. This is not for everyone. I'm going to grab a strap so that you can see with the strap. Strap. If you don't have a strap, you can just use like a belt. It's no big deal. So, you want like a moderate loop if you haven't done this before. You can take a huge loop if you want to. You come into your pose. Take your loop. Hook it on your back foot. And you take your hand like you're serving like a pizza. So my palm is facing up inside the loop. Now, see my elbow? I'm gonna pull it into my side and forward. Like I'm about to break someone's nose with my elbow. But that's a little violent for yoga, but that's what I want you to think instead of going out to the sides. It's bad for your shoulder. Elbow goes in and up. See how close it is to my head? And then I can reach back and grab my strap. Again, I hook my foot. My hand is in pizza position. Elbow pulls in. I grab inside my loop. Maybe dropping my head backwards, okay? This is gonna take it not only into your hip, but into your spine. Okay, if you wanna try it without a strap, and this is only for like the bendiest of the bendy people, you come into your single pigeon, just gonna move forward a little bit, bend your knee, your hand goes in that pizza parlor mode, and you grab, this is tricky, so your thumb is facing up, you grab the pinky side of your foot with your thumb on the sole of your foot and your fingers on the big toe end of your foot. Elbow comes into my body and up. I reach back and drop my head. It's hard to talk here. Coming out and out. Okay? That's only for the bendiest of the bendy. Okay, so you've got your single pigeon. From your single pigeon, we're gonna come into double pigeon. Double pigeon, you take your leg back around, stack your knee on your ankle, and your ankle on your knee. So a lot of people, when they do this, either they bend their knees in, so it's more like a pointy knee pose, it's the half lotus, or they do it really wide, like this. In this pose, you actually want your foot and your knee in alignment, your knee and your foot. And it's okay if your knee's sort of like this. At first, it's probably gonna be like that, but you'll get used to it. Eventually, when your hips open, your knees go down. It helps to scoot your hips backwards, and exactly like we did with the first pose with Baddha Konasana, we just fold into this one. Okay, again, minimum 5 breaths suggested, however many you want is fine, okay? Last stretch we're gonna do today, I love this stretch. This is a cow face pose. We're gonna do just the leg part. There's actually an arm part that goes with it. We're gonna skip that today because it gets a little intense. So, from double pigeon, I'm gonna slide my knees over so that my knees are stacked and my feet are, I'll turn so you can see, are parallel to the front of the room. Now this is sort of the final version. For most people, they're probably going to be sort of more in towards your body, and that's fine too. What you want to do is make sure your feet are sort of equal distance from your hips, because what you're going to see is that this bottom leg likes to go in, and this top leg likes to go out. So most people wind up like somewhere like this instead. So however far one foot is from your hip, let's try to get both feet from your hip. I mean, both feet the same distance from your hip. This is primarily a hip opener for your top hip. And just like before, we fold into the pose. Okay, so from side view, my leg comes on top. If I'm less bendy, my feet are very close to my butt, but not under my butt. If I'm more bendy, I'm trying to get my legs parallel to the front of the mat as I fold. How many breaths? I bet you could guess. 5 to 8. Okay, when you're done with your hip openers, oh, and by the way, if this one's hard, go onto your hands and knees, and then cross your knees from there and sit down. It's gonna help you to get deeper. When you're done with your hip openers, it always helps to come back into a neutral forward fold. Paschimottanasana, you just take your legs straight out in front, back bend right, Superman chest. Take your hands forward. You can grab what you want. You can grab your toes, the outsides of your feet. Sometimes I actually like to push my calves in. That feels really nice. And I fold down into my pose. Okay, this is just great for neutralizing all the work that we just did. This is Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California. And enjoy these hip openers. I'll see you again soon.